The year was 2345, and Earth was not the same place it had once been. After decades of endless wars, both among humans and against alien powers, the planet was tired. The Galactic Council, the powerful union of species that claimed to keep peace, across the stars decided humans needed something new to calm them. They called it the Stress Relief Program. The idea sounded strange at first. Every human citizen was to be issued a living companion, an alien from a species called the Valari. The council explained that the Valari were experts in empathy, comfort, and relaxation. According to the announcement, their presence would reduce human stress, lower crime, and prevent rebellion. Most people accepted the program without asking too many questions. Life was hard, food was rationed, and people were tired of constant rules. If the council wanted to hand out alien companions, who would say no? Daniel Carter did not think much of it at first. He was just another factory worker in New Chicago, a city rebuilt after the last global war. His days were long, filled with the sound of machines, smoke, and the ache of tired muscles. He returned home to a small gray apartment with cracked walls and a bed that creaked louder than the floorboards. One evening, a council transport landed in the middle of the district. Its metal wings folded like an insect, and from it stepped tall officials in silver uniforms. With them came the Valari. Daniel had seen pictures but never in person. The Valari looked almost human, though their features were sharper, their movements smoother, and their eyes brighter than any humans. They carried themselves with quiet grace, like dancers who had trained for centuries. The council officers called out names, and one by one, people stepped forward to receive their assigned companion. Daniel's name was called near the end. A Valari woman stepped toward him. She had pale silver hair that caught the light and eyes that glowed faintly blue. She bowed her head slightly and spoke in a calm, clear voice. "I am Lyra," she said. Daniel nodded awkwardly. Daniel." The officer handed him a datapad and barked orders. "Sign here. She is now your property for the duration of the program. Treat her as directed. She is here to serve your needs and reduce stress. Failure to comply will be noted." Daniel signed. What else could he do? Refusal was not an option when the council gave orders. That night, Daniel walked home with Lyra, following quietly at his side. He could feel neighbors' eyes on him as they watched from windows and doorways. Some men grinned and gave him thumbs up. Others laughed loudly, already boasting about what they planned to do with their new companions. Inside his small apartment, Daniel sat on the edge of the bed while Lyra stood silently near the door. The air between them felt heavy. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck and cleared his throat. "So, I guess this is it. You're supposed to, help me relax?" Lyra tilted her head slightly. "That is what they ordered me to do." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp, watching him carefully. Daniel shrugged. "Well, I'm not sure how this is supposed to work. Everyone else seems pretty happy with the arrangement." Lyra's gaze did not waver. "Do you want me to do what they expect?" Daniel hesitated. He knew what the program meant, even if no one said it out loud. But something about Lyra's tone made him uneasy. It was not shy or afraid. It was firm. "I guess so," he said, slowly. Lyra shook her head. "No, I will not undress." Daniel blinked. He thought he misheard her. "Wait. What?" "I said I will not undress," she repeated, her voice steady. "I am not here to be treated like a thing. I will not follow that part of the program." Daniel stared at her in shock. He had heard that the Valari were trained for obedience, that they never refused their assigned humans. Yet here she was, standing tall, refusing without hesitation. "Look, Lyra, I don't want to get in trouble," Daniel said, rubbing his face. "If the council finds out you're not doing what they ordered, they'll blame me." "You are worried about punishment," Lyra replied. "But I ask you this, do you truly want me to obey? Or are you simply afraid of them?" Her words cut deeper than Daniel expected. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He thought about his life, the endless orders at the factory, the strict rules in the city, the way every part of his existence seemed controlled by someone else. Did he really want another person in his life who was forced to follow orders? He sighed heavily. I don't know what I want. Lyra's expression softened slightly. She stepped closer, though still keeping a respectful distance. Then, let us start with something simple. Conversation. You speak, I listen, I speak, you listen. No orders, no commands. Just words. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then gave a small, tired laugh. Talking, huh? That's not what the council had in mind. Perhaps not, Lyra said, her lips curving into the faintest smile. But perhaps it will help more than what they planned. That night, Daniel sat with Lyra at the small kitchen table. They talked about simple things, the factory, the city, the stars above Earth. Lyra listened closely, asking questions that no one else ever asked him. She spoke of her own world, of silver forests and oceans that glowed in the night. Her words painted pictures in his mind that felt more soothing than anything the program could have ordered. When Daniel finally went to bed, he realized something surprising. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt lighter. Not because Lyra had done what the council expected, but because she had done the opposite. She had refused, and in refusing, she gave him something real. Companionship, not compliance. But Daniel also knew something else. If the council ever discovered that Lyra refused to follow the program, both of them could be in danger. And so, their strange story began. The next morning, Daniel woke to the soft hum of the city outside his apartment. Sunlight barely reached between the tall gray towers of New Chicago, but it glimmered off Lyra's silver hair as she quietly tidied the small kitchen. She moved with precision, like every step was measured and meaningful. Daniel rubbed his eyes and sat up. "Morning," he mumbled. Lyra looked at him with those calm, glowing blue eyes. "Good morning," she said. "Did you sleep well?" "I think so," Daniel replied. "Better than usual, I guess. Talking last night. It helped." Lyra inclined her head. "I am glad. I did not expect the program to work through conversation, but perhaps it is more effective than what they intended." Daniel scratched the back of his neck. "Yeah, I don't know why they make everything so weird. Most people just, follow the instructions without asking." Lyra stopped what she was doing and studied him. "Because most humans are afraid of being punished or embarrassed or judged. They obey because it is easier than thinking for themselves." Daniel frowned. He had always considered himself a normal worker, just like everyone else. But Lyra's words made him pause. You really think people are afraid?" "I do," she said softly. "But not all humans. I sense something different in you. You do not seem afraid of thinking for yourself." Daniel felt a small warmth in his chest. No alien had ever complimented him or questioned him in this way. He had always felt invisible in the noise of the city, just another face in the crowd, another worker following orders. But here was Lyra seeing him for who he was. "Maybe," he said slowly. "But most people just want comfort. They don't want to rock the boat." Lyra nodded. "Comfort is fine. But do you think comfort is worth losing your freedom? Or your respect?" Daniel had no answer. He didn't even know what respect felt like anymore, except for the tiny spark he felt when Lyra spoke to him honestly. For the next few days, Daniel and Lyra settled into a routine, though not the one the council had planned. She did not follow the program. She did not obey orders blindly. She did not act like a tool for his stress. Instead, they talked. They walked through the streets of New Chicago, explored the quiet corners of abandoned factories, and shared stories about life on Earth and life in the stars. Lyra told him about the Volari. Their people were once explorers, philosophers, and artists. Their cities floated above luminous oceans and their forests shimmered with light. But after a war with the Council, many Volari were forced into service programs across the galaxy. Most were assigned as companions or workers stripped of their freedom. I volunteered, Lyra explained one evening, her glowing eyes reflecting the dim light of Daniel's apartment. Not to serve, but to see if humans could be different, to see if any would treat us as equals. Daniel leaned back, amazed. And, you think I'm different? Lyra's lips curved slightly. Yes, you do not demand obedience. You do not see me as property. You, listen. The word listen carried weight. Daniel felt proud, though he could not explain why. For the first time, he realized that the program's intent, to control humans by controlling their companions, might have backfired with him. Instead of being a tool to calm him, Lyra had become a teacher, reminding him of something he had almost forgotten: the value of choice. But their quiet life could not last forever. The council's inspections were frequent, and word of non-compliant companions had started spreading. Some humans whispered about Daniel's alien, calling her defiant or broken. Others laughed behind their masks, claiming he was too weak to control her. One afternoon, while Daniel repaired a machine at the factory, a coworker leaned close. "Hey, Carter," he whispered. "I heard your companion doesn't, do what she's supposed to. Is that true?" Daniel frowned. "Yeah, she refuses, so what?" The city of New Chicago was restless. The streets buzzed with the low hum of machines, hovering transporters, and distant sirens. People moved quickly, some with eyes down, some glancing nervously at the council patrols that passed without warning. Daniel Carter felt the tension every day, even before Lyra arrived. Now it seemed sharper, heavier. Lyra did not seem worried. She moved calmly through the apartment, arranging books and small plants Daniel had rescued from the factory's rooftop garden. Her presence was soothing, but it also reminded him that not everyone was like her. Most humans, most Valari, were still trapped in the council's rigid program. One evening, Daniel returned from work to find Lyra staring out the window, her glowing blue eyes fixed on the city below. "They're watching," she said softly. "Not here, but around the city. Inspectors, patrols. Some humans are already reporting companions who do not comply." Daniel sighed. "I know. I've heard whispers at the factory. People are talking about us. Some say we're brave, others say we're stupid." Lyra turned to him. "I am not concerned about bravery or stupidity. I am concerned about truth. And the truth is that most Valari are forced into this program. They have no choice. Only a few, like me, remember freedom, and only humans who see us as equals can understand it." Daniel sat down heavily. "I never thought about it that way. I just thought the program was supposed to help humans, not hurt us." "It was never about helping," Lyra said, her voice quiet but firm. "It is about control. They want humans distracted, obedient, and weak. Most people fall for it. But not you. That is why I stay with you." Daniel swallowed hard. He had never considered the program as a weapon, but it made sense. The council had always preferred order over freedom. Their inspections were not just to enforce rules. They were to remind humans that resistance was dangerous, even impossible. Over the next few days, Daniel noticed the first cracks in the program's facade. Other humans who had received Valari, companions, began to whisper to each other, quietly questioning the obedience of their aliens. Some companions who had once been silent and compliant seemed hesitant now. One worker joked that his Valari companion had refused a minor command, and the laughter spread across the factory floor. Daniel's chest tightened. If more humans realized that Valari could refuse, it could spark problems. But would the council allow it? One evening, Lyra and Daniel went for a walk in the older section of the city. The streets there were narrower, the buildings taller, and the shadows deeper. It was quieter, but that only made it easier to hear whispers. "They are talking about us," Daniel said, nodding toward a group of men in silver uniforms moving quickly down the street. "I saw them watching from the rooftop. They know something's different about you." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. "They cannot control truth forever. The council can enforce rules, but it cannot force respect. and it cannot force understanding. That is why I continue to refuse. Because in time, humans will see that control is weak when compared to choice. Daniel looked at her in surprise. You really think people will see it? I do, Lyra said. Choice is stronger than fear. And humans are capable of extraordinary things when they are free to decide for themselves. Her words reminded Daniel of the nights they had spent talking. Her presence had become more than just a comfort. It was a guide. She challenged him, questioned him, and forced him to think beyond the narrow walls of his apartment, beyond the machines, at the factory, beyond the rules of the council. As they walked, a faint commotion drew their attention. A group of humans had gathered near a small plaza. Their Valari companions stood silently beside them. But Daniel noticed something unusual. Several aliens hesitated when their humans gave them instructions. Some ignored them entirely. It's happening, Daniel whispered. Other Valari, they're refusing too. Lyra nodded. Yes, the cracks are spreading. Not all humans are brave enough to notice, and not all Valari are brave enough to act. But those who do will change everything. Daniel's heart pounded. The thought of rebellion had never crossed his mind before. He had been a worker, a follower, a man who obeyed the rules simply to survive. Yet now he felt a spark of something, dangerous and exciting. That night, back in his apartment, Daniel and Lyra spoke long into the quiet hours. They talked about what might happen if the council discovered the defiance. They talked about the humans who might be inspired by Lyra's refusal and the Valari who might regain a sense of pride. I never asked for this, Daniel admitted at last. I never wanted a rebellion. I just wanted peace. Lyra smiled faintly. Peace is not simply the absence of conflict. True peace comes when humans are free to choose, when aliens are free to choose, and when neither is forced to obey. For survival. You may not want it, but it is arriving whether you like it or not. Daniel shivered, not from cold, but from realization. The world around him, so tightly controlled, was starting to shift. He had no idea where it would lead, but he knew one thing for certain. Lyra's refusal was not just an act of defiance. It was the first spark of freedom. He looked at her, glowing eyes reflecting the dim light of the apartment, and felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. What do we do now? He asked. Lyra stepped closer. We watch. We listen. We prepare. The council is strong, but humans are stronger when they act with choice. And you are learning what it means to lead, even if you do not know it. Yet, Daniel did not answer immediately. He thought of the city outside, the streets full of whispering humans, the aliens slowly awakening from their obedience, and the inspectors watching from the shadows. He thought of the life he had once accepted and the uncertain path now opening before him, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt alive. It was dangerous. It was uncertain, but it was real. And that was more than the council could ever force. The city had grown quieter that week, but the silence was uneasy. Daniel could feel it in his chest, the kind of tension that made the hair on his arms stand on end. He had spent days avoiding the usual patrol routes on his way home from the factory, but tonight he had no choice. He had to return to his apartment, where Lyra waited. As he approached the building, he noticed a small group of people gathered near the plaza. At first, it seemed like a casual crowd, but Daniel noticed something strange. The Valari companions standing beside their humans were not obeying instructions. Some were refusing to move. Others were ignoring commands completely. Whispers filled the air, a mixture of fear, excitement, and curiosity. Daniel's heart raced. This was happening faster than he had expected. He realized Lyra's quiet defiance was no longer an isolated incident. It was spreading. He reached his apartment and found Lyra standing by the window watching the streets with her usual calm intensity. They're resisting, Daniel said, nearly out of breath. Other Valari, they're refusing too. People are noticing. Lyra nodded. Yes. The cracks are widening. Soon, Humans will have to make a choice. Either obey the council blindly, or see the truth for themselves. Daniel's mind raced. He had never thought of himself as a leader, but now he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. If others were inspired by Lyra's defiance, he had to act carefully. One wrong move could bring the council down on all of them. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the apartment. Daniel froze. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Council inspectors," she said quietly. "They have arrived." Daniel's stomach tightened. The inspectors were strict and unforgiving. Any report of non-compliance could result in fines, imprisonment, or worse for both humans and Valari. He swallowed hard and moved toward the door. Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "Stay calm. We will not panic. We will face this together." Daniel nodded, taking a deep breath. He opened the door slowly, revealing two council inspectors in silver uniforms. Their expressions were cold and precise, their eyes scanning the apartment with practiced scrutiny. "Daniel Carter," one of them said, voice clipped. "Your companion, Lyra, has been reported for non-compliance. She has refused the assigned duties multiple times. Explain yourself." Daniel swallowed. She talks with me. We share ideas. She helps me think. She's not refusing to... She's not harming anyone." The inspectors exchanged a look, clearly unimpressed. "That is not the point. All companions must follow their assigned programs. Refusal is a violation of council order. You are responsible for her behavior." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly blue. "I have chosen not to follow a program that treats my people as tools. I am not harming anyone. I am simply choosing to act with dignity and respect." The inspectors paused. One of them sneered. "Dignity? Respect? These are humans, not Valari. Your words are meaningless. Compliance is required." Daniel felt a surge of anger, but he remembered Lyra's advice. "Stay calm. Face this together." He straightened his back. "Lyra is not here to obey blindly. She is here as my companion, yes, but also as a friend. She shows me what real choice is. And I support her." The inspectors' faces hardened. "Support her? You are complicit in her disobedience. You have 1 hour to comply with the program or face immediate punishment." Before Daniel could respond, the sound of shouts erupted from the street below. A crowd had gathered, humans and Valari together. Some were waving makeshift signs. Others were holding their companions in protective stances. The message was clear. Enough of forced obedience. The days after the first spark of rebellion were tense. New Chicago was alive with quiet murmurs of defiance. Humans whispered in back alleys and abandoned buildings, while their Valari companions stood silently beside them, no longer passive, no longer obedient. The council had underestimated the strength that came from choice. Daniel Carter felt the weight of responsibility every morning. He had never wanted to lead, yet circumstances pushed him forward. Lyra's calm guidance had taught him that leadership was not about giving orders. It was about inspiration, courage, and trust. And Daniel began to see that his role in this growing movement could change the city, perhaps even the entire program. One evening, Daniel and Lyra met with a small group of humans and Valari in the basement of an old factory. The air smelled of metal and oil, but it was also filled with energy. People speaking quietly, planning carefully, listening intently. "We can't wait for them to act first," Daniel said, his voice low but steady. "The council will send reinforcements. If they come for us unprepared, it could be the end for all of us." Lyra nodded. "We prepare not with weapons, but with strategy. Knowledge and coordination are our greatest tools. Humans can think. Valari can resist. Together we are stronger than any force the council can send." A Valari named Sira, younger and less experienced than Lyra, spoke up. "What if they arrest us? What if they punish the humans who refuse?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Then we protect each other. That's why we move together quietly and carefully. Fear is the Council's weapon. If we do not fear, it loses its power. Plans were made for small, controlled actions. Messages sent secretly to other districts, warning humans about inspections, encouraging Valari to resist quietly but firmly. Daniel realized that this was more than defiance. It was the birth of a movement, a small but growing network of humans and Valari united by choice. The first true test came 2 nights later. Patrols had discovered a cluster of rebellious humans in one district. The Council sent troops with orders to arrest anyone whose companion refused the program. Daniel and Lyra watched from the shadows as the enforcers approached. "Now is the time," Lyra whispered. Daniel nodded, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He moved quietly through alleys, warning people ahead of time, guiding Valari and humans to safer routes, keeping them out of the line of sight of the troops. It was tense work, requiring focus, calm, and courage, but it was working. From rooftops, they watched as humans began standing together, facing the enforcers not with violence but with unity. Valari companions stood proudly beside them, refusing to comply with the Council's commands. The sight was powerful. Humans and Valari side by side, neither afraid nor obedient, simply asserting their right to choice. One inspector shouted orders, waving his arms, trying to break their formation. Another threatened fines and imprisonment. But the crowd did not flinch. Humans whispered to each other, reminding themselves that fear was the Council's tool. The Valari companions glowed faintly in response, their calm determination radiating strength. Daniel felt a surge of pride. He had never imagined that people could stand together like this, that choice could be so powerful. Lyra stood beside him, glowing softly, a symbol of quiet resistance that inspired everyone around her. When the enforcers realized that compliance was failing, they hesitated. Their confidence, built on years of absolute control, was cracking. Daniel noticed the panic in their eyes, the first sign that humans and Valari, acting together, could challenge the Council's authority. "Now," Lyra whispered. "We act." Daniel took a deep breath. He stepped forward, addressing the group quietly but firmly. "We do not fight with weapons. We fight with choice. We refuse to obey orders that make us less than who we are. Stand with your companions. Stand with each other. Show them that control is not stronger than courage." The crowd responded immediately. A cheer rose, low but determined. Humans and Valari alike stood taller, their unity evident. The enforcers tried to push forward, but each step was met with calm resistance. People refused to scatter. Valari refused to comply. It was a silent victory, but a victory nonetheless. As the night wore on, Daniel and Lyra moved through the city, helping those in need, guiding humans and Valari to safer locations. Each successful action strengthened the network, spreading hope and courage. By dawn, the district was quiet again, but something had changed. The Council's grip had weakened, at least in that corner of the city. Humans were no longer just passive citizens. They were thinking, planning, and standing up for themselves. And Valari companions, once obedient tools, were now allies in a growing movement of resistance. Daniel looked at Lyra, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I never thought this would be possible," he admitted. Lyra smiled softly, her eyes glowing, faintly. "It is always possible when humans act with choice and courage. You see it now, Daniel. This is your answer. This is humanity's answer." Daniel nodded. He realized that the Council had underestimated something essential. Humans were not weak. They were not easily controlled. And when they acted with intelligence, unity, and courage, they could challenge even the most powerful authority. In the FIO, quiet hours of the morning, Daniel and Lyra returned to their apartment. The city outside was still, but inside the spark of rebellion burned bright. It was no longer just about survival. It was about freedom, dignity, and the power to choose. For the first time, Daniel understood the truth. The Council had thought it could control humans by giving them companions. But humans, when inspired and respected, could achieve far more than any program could predict, and with Lyra by his side, Daniel knew that humanity's answer would continue to grow stronger. The city of New Chicago had changed. The streets were quieter now, but not in the way they had been before. The silence was no longer heavy with fear. Instead, it was filled with anticipation, careful planning, and the subtle hum of people working together. Humans and Valari alike, moved with purpose, their actions guided by trust, choice, and unity. Daniel Carter had learned more in the past weeks than he ever thought possible. The rebellion had started as a quiet spark, one human and one Valari refusing to follow a program. But it had grown into something larger, a network of people who refused to accept control without question, who understood the value of freedom, and who recognized the strength in partnership. Lyra stood beside him on the rooftop of their apartment building, her glowing blue eyes scanning the city below. The sun was beginning to rise, casting pale light on the tall towers and narrow streets. She had been quiet for a long moment, as if thinking. "They will come," she said softly. "The Council will not accept this defiance forever. Their forces are stronger, but numbers alone cannot win against unity and intelligence." Daniel nodded. "We've seen that already. They tried to push us back, but we didn't break. Humans and Valari together, we're stronger than they expected." Lyra's lips curved slightly. "And now we show them the full strength of that unity. Not with violence, but with action, with courage, and with choice." Daniel took a deep breath. He could feel the tension in the air, but it was different now. It was no longer fear. It was determination. The people of New Chicago were ready. The first signs of the Council's response came just after dawn. Patrols moved through the streets, their uniforms bright under the sunlight. But this time, the humans did not scatter. Valari companions stood tall beside them. The patrols expected fear, compliance, and submission. Instead, they faced calm defiance. Daniel moved through the crowd, guiding people and coordinating safe routes. Lyra walked beside him, calm and glowing, giving instructions that were subtle but effective. They were not armed with weapons. Their strength lay in organization, knowledge, and the courage to act as one. An inspector shouted orders, his voice echoing off the buildings. "All companions will comply. Any resistance will be punished immediately." A hush fell over the crowd, but it did not break. Instead, Daniel stepped forward and addressed the humans and Valari alike. "You have a choice," he said firmly. "They cannot force your mind, your courage, or your heart. Stand with your companions. Stand with each other. You are not tools. You are not obedient machines. You are alive, and your choices matter." A wave of quiet agreement spread through the crowd. Humans raised their heads and Valari companions glowed softly, radiating calm but unyielding energy. The inspectors realized that control was slipping from their hands. The first clash was not with weapons, but with the mind. Humans and Valari began moving strategically, using alleys, rooftops, and side streets to avoid capture. They communicated silently, guided by gestures and signals that the Council could not predict. Each successful maneuver spread hope and confidence among the people. Daniel glanced at Lyra. "They're watching, but they can't stop us. Not now." Lyra nodded. "They cannot. Control is an illusion. Choice is stronger than any order." By mid-morning, the streets were alive with activity. More humans joined the movement, inspired by the defiance they had witnessed. More Valari companions began refusing the program, asserting their dignity and standing with their assigned humans as equals. The Council had thought fear would be enough to maintain obedience, but humans and Valari together